I never posed for this portrait, I never trained to be an airline pilot, and I've never visited any jungle. But with Higgsfield AI, you can make all of these things happen. If you're new here, I'm Jack. I've been a VFX artist in the advertising industry for over 10 years now, and I've worked for many of the biggest brands on the planet. I've made it my personal mission to become incredibly skilled at using the best creative AI tools out there. Now, Higgsfield AI is definitely one of the most impressive AI image generators on the market right now. And what I think really shines about this tool in particular is the level of realism that you can achieve with it. Now, I'm a huge advocate for Midjourney. I think it's personally the best image generator on the market, but it does have this kind of dreamlike quality to all of the generations. Pretty much everything you create with it feels very cinematic, and it feels very Midjourney as well. It has a very particular vibe. So if you are going for something that looks incredibly photoreal and almost has the vibe as if it was shot on somebody's phone, Higsfield is the tool for you. However, there is some things that you need to know to get the most out of Higsfield, and that's what I'm going to teach you guys within this video. I'm going to take you through my experience of first getting to grips with the tool. You'll see that I made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot of things along the way. But when you come away from this video, if you do choose to purchase a Higsfield subscription, you're going to instantly get the most out of it without having to make the mistakes that I made. So before we get into it, if you do enjoy today's video, guys, make sure to whack a like on there for me, consider subscribing if you're new, and of course, ring that bell notification icon so that you never miss any future uploads. So you can see here some of the most recent stuff that I put together with Higsfield, but if we scroll all the way down, you're going to see some good stuff and some pretty bad stuff as well. And that's really what I want to take you guys through. Now, there's a tool that comes as part of Higsfield where you are able to create a character. And this is basically their version of Midjourney's Omni reference feature. So if we go up here to character, we have the option to create a character, and it recommends that we upload 20 plus high quality images of a particular person from all different angles, wearing different clothing in different environments, and then it can build a model from that data. And you can see here, I've already created a character for myself by uploading 31 different images. So that, I suppose, is step one, really, for most use cases. And if we go across to create images, and again, I'll just scroll right the way down. This was really the start of my journey with Higsfield, and it was creating this image of me skydiving. So when we want to create an image, there are a few different options available to us. Obviously, in this little dialog window is where we can enter our text prompt, so we can describe what we want Higsfield to create. Down here, we can pick the model that we're after. They also offer Flux Context Max and GPT Image. Then we have the option to select our aspect ratio. I usually go for 16:9. You can select your quality preset, so we can go for high, which uses more credits, or basic, which is fastest and cheapest, but uses less credits. And then there is the option to enhance your prompts. Now, I would recommend actually turning this off. If you're giving Higsfield a really well-written descriptive prompt, you're after something very specific, but then you're giving Higsfield the option to change that prompt, to modify it in a way that they think it's enhanced, is probably not the right thing to do. It's giving you less control as the user. Over here, you're able to select your characters. Of course, I only have myself created at the moment, so we'll just leave that on. And then this is where things get a little bit more interesting. Higsfield gives you these various different visual styles to pick from, and you need to be quite careful about how you use these. I would personally only recommend using general, iPhone, and realistic. There is also fisheye, I believe, which can give you some really nice results. It might be a little bit, yeah, fisheye down here. That can give you some really nice results. A lot of the other ones, they work different to how you might think. You kind of assume that this vibe is going to be worked into your prompt, but what actually happens in practice is the prompt that you feed into Higsfield is to some extent disregarded in favor of creating, let's say, like a Y2K poster. It really seems to crowbar in these effects, and a lot of what you're specifying will get lost in the process. So here, for example, these images, even though I do think they look pretty good, I was using the, let me just find it, the Mount Fuji preset. And I kind of assumed it was just going to be that photographic style with that type of filter applied. But no, it literally puts you as if you're stood near Mount Fuji, which is not what I expected it to do at all. And if we scroll a little bit further up, we've got some of the crazy stuff I created with the Y2K poster preset. Now, again, what I thought it would probably do is take this cool Y2K vibe and apply it to my prompt. But it didn't do that. It really just forced this style in a very heavy-handed fashion onto the original prompt that I fed Higsfield. And yeah, I don't even know what to say about these images. I showed my wife these. I was sat downstairs with my wife whilst I was first playing around with this tool, and we were cracking up looking at some of the outright bizarre stuff that comes out of Higsfield. So like I say, if we just head a little bit further up, I really like this as a demonstration of how incredible Higsfield can be as a tool. But I want to stress that I was using the general preset here, and I quite like some of these as well. These are quite cool. Again, it does really look like me, and sometimes you do struggle to achieve that with a tool like Midjourney. But you can see the difference here between using the general style, where it does feel a little bit more painterly, a little bit more cinematic and maybe surreal as well, or using their realistic preset, which in some cases does literally look like I could have taken these photos myself, which is seriously impressive. So now you guys can understand the power and the drawback of using the Higsfield visual styles. So far, I would really only recommend general, iPhone, and realistic. Play around with those however much you want. Particularly general and realistic seem to fit most use cases the best. If you want something that does feel more surreal and cinematic, go for general. If you want something that literally looks like it could have happened, so we can find that image of me as a pilot or the image of me in the swimming pool, this is using the realistic tool. And then if we compare, so this exact same text prompt of me sitting in a swimming pool reading a newspaper wearing a suit, right? If we compare the realistic output to the general output, you can see that you get a much more cinematic, painterly vibe in some cases. With realistic, you really do get that idea that this could have happened for real, which is insane. It really is the strength of Higsfield as a tool. The other thing I want to talk about, and I learned this lesson the hard way, is that if you train your character or train your model for a certain person who usually wears glasses and a hat or any other different accessories or props, if you want to call them that, you need to make sure that you include that in your text prompt. Because if you don't, then you get this kind of result where it sort of half looks like me and half doesn't. So again, this is using the realistic preset, and I just wanted to prompt Higsfield to create some images of me posing for selfies and things like that next to an active volcano. And you can see in this one, it kind of looks like me, but there's quite a lot of things wrong with these generations, and I quickly realized it was because I didn't prompt it to include my cap and my glasses. Day-to-day life, I'm always wearing my glasses and I'm always wearing one of my baseball caps. So it's important to include that information in the prompt that you give Higsfield to carry out. And also this acts as a really great comparison point as well between the type of images you can get from Midjourney compared to what you get from Higsfield. So I just want to scroll down here and find the volcano images that I created. This is a really great example. So this was made obviously with Midjourney, and this image is a lot more visually striking, aesthetically pleasing, a lot more artistically engaging, I would argue. And if you're after that kind of output, I would still suggest that you go with Midjourney. The issue is that sometimes it won't give you a photoreal result. It won't always look like you. Higsfield, you can get these images. Once I prompted it to have my glasses and my hat on, you can see they start looking really photoreal. You can get that photoreal feel from Higsfield, but it's nowhere near as cinematic as something like Midjourney. So just keep that in mind. Each tool has its own strengths and weaknesses and different use cases as a result of that. So far we've learned about the visual styles, which ones to use and which ones to avoid. And we've also learned about training the model, creating your character, and ensuring that if you are a person that wears accessories, you include that in your text prompt when you're creating your images. Those are probably the two biggest lessons I learned whilst experimenting with this tool. But you can see here, with the pilot images we created, the results were really, really great. I showed this to a fair few of my family and friends, and they were completely blown away by some of these pilot images. There's a couple of things I want to point out though. As with any AI image or video generator, there will be issues and artifacts. You can see this one here, the kind of windshield is kind of just floating there, and there's like a webcam here. I don't know if they usually have them in planes. Maybe they do. And then some strange like burn mark up on the wall. So this particular generation, even though I think I look really great, there are some strange artifacts happening. Although you could quite easily export this from Higsfield, pull it into Photoshop and just select this area and use generative fill, and it will just get rid of that really easily. And this kind of weird burn mark texture above my head, you can really easily get rid of that with Photoshop. So it's not necessarily the end of the world. I did touch on quickly as well the use of the fish eye style, and you can get some really quite nice results from that. I think that's because it's not trying to crowbar in such a specific, almost like forceful, very crude style into your text prompt. It's not modifying your parameters too heavily. You're going to get a lot closer to what you originally were after, just with that lens applied to it. So if you see any visual styles like that you want to experiment with, I definitely encourage you to do so. It's the more heavy-handed ones that you need to be intelligent about how you use them. A lot of the time they just didn't give the effect that I was after at all. But yeah, the jungle stuff, really, really great. Skin texture, realistic details, great lighting. Love what I got out of this. And here I experimented a little bit with Tokyo street style. The prompt was, I think I saw some cool like fashion editorial stuff on Midjourney, and I was trying to replicate that of a guy in like a street sort of climbing up a ladder. It looked cool on Midjourney, but you can see that Higgsfield ends up creating some really strange artifacts with this particular prompt. So here, for example, I have no idea what on earth is happening with the structure of the ladder. Very strange. You kind of get a similar thing here where the ladder is not leaning on anything, so obviously it would just topple over. And even this here, it kind of just looks like I'm latched onto like a big hunk of metal. These images just, yeah, pretty poor. Again, here, some really strange results. One where it decided to just put another cap on top of my head. Not sure why. I was experimenting with the 2000s fashion visual style. Again, you can see it's applying things to my text prompt that I don't want it to, and you get some very odd results. Now here is when I started to experiment with the idea of me laying in a swimming pool with a suit on, reading a newspaper. This kind of very fashion editorial vibe, but also quite surreal was what I was going for. And you can see here it struggles with some of these generations as well. I don't know why in this one I've got the newspaper on my face. This one here, the newspaper is like the size of like a pamphlet, and it's stuck on my head. Even though there are good things about these images, there's a definite cinematic quality to them. Obviously from like a physical perspective and like why is this character doing what he's doing, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense, right? We already touched on the Mount Fuji ones. Again, it kind of forced the visual style into my prompt and maybe gave a result that we weren't after. But here we start to get some really quite impressive results from Higsfield, and this is using the general preset. I think what I had to do was tidy up my prompt a fair bit from when we were getting this result. And then we get something like this, which personally, it doesn't quite look photoreal to me. There is skin texture there. I think I just look a little bit too perfect. Sometimes that's what you're after, right? And of course, here is where we switched over to the realistic style, and you start to get some images that could have actually happened. Really, really impressive. Quite funny here in this one, I'm actually featured in the newspaper that I'm reading as well. Cool little detail there. And this here is what you would have seen at the start of the video. I think this looks absolutely amazing. I think the water texture, the caustic lighting, everything looks incredibly real. This for me is where Higsfield shines. This is the use case where it really does put in the work. And now I just carried on experimenting with Higsfield, and I'm going to show you some more of the downside to this particular tool. If we head back to Midjourney, I just need to scroll up a little bit, and we are looking for when I was prompting it to create some images of me meditating, floating in midair with all of these rocks also kind of hovering next to me. I got some really great stuff out of Midjourney. I really liked this one, and I also really liked this one here. So Midjourney does the job. You give it a good detailed prompt, it will give you some incredibly beautiful cinematic images. However, giving the same prompt, exact same prompt actually, to Higsfield and using the realistic style, it was just not giving me what I wanted at all. It's just basically just selfies. You can't see my body levitating at all, and I'm pretty sure I was trying to force it to show my full body, and it just was not doing it. It was not having it. They end up just being these weird kind of candid selfies. I'm not sure about the position of my leg there. That's quite odd. So you can see that you do get some odd artifacting happening with Higsfield at times. And then we switched to the general style to see if we gave it more like cinematic and surreal leeway. Would it be able to create something close to what we got from Midjourney? And the answer is no, it still could not do that. Higsfield really is tailored towards creating realistic images. If you're after something that has a surreal or dreamlike or cinematic quality to it, Midjourney would still be my personal go-to. And if we scroll up, we're back to the crazy experimental outputs that I started getting from Higsfield. If we take a look here, what I was trying to recreate was this image that I saw in Midjourney, which I thought was really cool, super surreal. But obviously this leans into Midjourney's strengths, which is creating these really beautiful dreamlike images. If we try to get that output from Higsfield, we struggle, and it creates something that I can only describe as pure nightmare fuel. Like, haunting in many different ways, pretty haunting. I don't think we need to look at these any longer. Then I tried to create something again that Midjourney would do very, very well, which is really random. Me on a motorbike in a jungle, driving away from a giant spider. And Higsfield struggled. It struggled hard. We were using the realistic preset here, and the results that we got were just very, very strange. And this one here, what on earth is going on with my cap? Terrible images that you could not really use for anything. Played around a little bit here with some more visual styles, specifically the spotlight one, and you can see you can get some really great results from it. You just have to pick the right visual style and understand how it will apply the vibe to your text prompt. This is kind of similar to the fisheye style, where it can leave your prompt intact but apply that vibe to it. This here, invert ethereal, I don't know what on earth is going on here. The less said the better, I think. And I think at this point, what I was doing was just leaving the prompts empty, or maybe I was just adding a description of myself. So I was including the cap and glasses, and I was just letting Higsfield have free reign with its own visual style. So this is the movie one. I don't know, this does not feel like a still from a movie to me whatsoever. I don't really know what's going on here. Again, random shoe on the floor. I look a bit strange. You'll get some odd results. Sometimes it does really look like me, I've got to say. Like, this is kind of cool. It just doesn't feel like a movie. I don't really get why that's the visual style it's described as. And then here, office on a beach. If we look at the thumbnail for office on a beach, it looks really, really cool. But then when we actually try to execute that, Very strange. Okay, here it is. So that looks great, that kind of image, but when we try to do it for me, wow. Outright bizarre. Doesn't make a lot of sense. My phone's just stuck on the floor. Terrible. Why am I wearing a fedora? What is going on? And again, this is what I mean by if you select one of those type of visual styles on Higsfield, you're going to get some just outright bizarre results. My keyboard wire's been cut as well. Odd. Very odd. This is probably the best one we got from this. I like how the phone is like super retro. The computer's really retro. But yeah, just be careful about your use of visual styles. I tried out the giant people style here. This was really terrible output. It just looks like I'm like superimposed on a background. I don't know why I'm floating at that angle. This just looks like a normal selfie with just odd perspective. Again, I'm like superimposed with these terrible contact shadows on the floor. The angle is just really strange. And again, like it's like I've just been cut out from another background and stuck on top of this city scene. Really, really strange. So steer clear of that one. Now this here is where I started experimenting with Higgsfield's Recreate tool, which is actually a web extension you can install into your web browser. I know for sure that it works with Google Chrome, so if you want to play around with this, you can. You literally right click on an image that you like the look of and click Recreate, and it will send it over to Higgsfield for you. You apply your character to that, you pick your aspect ratio, and this is the kind of results that you get. Sometimes this works really, really well. I think this image here looks really great, but it also does try to apply like the hairstyle and stuff of the original model to your character, so it can kind of look like a blend of you and someone else. This worked really, really well, although it didn't quite look like the original reference. I think the realism here is like outstanding. This is out of this world. Here you can see where it struggled. Again, it tried to mix my features too much with a different person, and you get this strange kind of blend of me and someone else. Lighting looks really good though. Skin texture, always on point. These are the strengths of Higsfield for sure. We've got a really great output here using the Recreate feature. I love how kind of like imperfect my beard is. That's really cool. Those are the sort of things that I think make an image look really hyper real. Some of these are okay. I don't really understand when there's just like a floating hand and a phone in the background. Little bit strange. This one here worked really well. Big fan of this. You can see, however, that Higsfield struggled with the text on the back of this person's shirt. That is often an issue you get with AI image and video generators. I use the Recreate feature here. The original image was an older gentleman who's playing around with his mustache. So you can see it's kind of tried to blend me with that person, giving me like gray hair and stuff, removed my glasses. Really strange combination of me and somebody else here as well, giving me curly hair. If I ever wondered what I'd look like with curly hair, now I know. I actually don't hate it, but yeah, kind of surreal. Some nice fashion editorial images going on here as well. Some of these look really good. I think that could literally be real. It's crazy. Me looking a little bit like some kind of pimp or something here. I don't know what's going on here. I think the original image was of Andrew Garfield at like a film premiere. Very odd. Some of these ones are okay. I don't love them though. They're not that like aesthetically interesting really, a little bit bland. And then we come right the way back up to the top. And what I want to talk a little bit about is my favorite workflow for using Higsfield. So let me just open up ChatGPT. What I would suggest you guys do if you're trying to get the most out of Higsfield as a tool is find reference images that you really like, feed them into ChatGPT and write a prompt like, please write me a prompt for Higgsfield AI that I can use to recreate this image. And then you literally just copy and paste in this prompt, go over to Higgsfield, copy and paste that into this text prompt field, select your character, and either use the general or the realistic style. That is how I ended up getting the best out of this tool, in my opinion. I think this looks really, really great. And we did kind of touch on these at the start of the video. You can see the difference once again between the general visual style from Higsfield, where things look a little bit more dreamlike, a little bit more painterly, and then the realistic visual style that you have on offer where, you know, this could be an actual real selfie where I'm in this weird living room, and the color palette is very consistent. But guys, I really do hope you enjoyed today's video. This is after playing around with Higgsfield's image generation for many hours at this point, working my way through my credits to learn the hard lessons essentially. If you do want to support me, make sure to whack a like on the video, consider subscribing if this is the first time you've stumbled upon the channel, and of course ring that bell notification icon so you don't miss any future uploads, because I plan to test out many great creative AI tools in the near future. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you have any other questions at all, be sure to whack them down below in the comments section. Have a great day, people. I'll see you in the next video.